I don't think I've ever put it more bluntly than this, but looks like the Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, is finally starting to admit that they have no clue.
Meanwhile, some members of the Reserve Bank board have twigged that the rate cuts might not actually be working. In the minutes from the meeting, where the cash rate was cut for the third time, taking it to 0.75%, the members recognise that some transmission channels, such as a pickup in borrowing or the effect on the home building sector, may not be operating in the same way as in the past, and that the negative effect of low interest rates on the income and confidence of savers might be more significant.
Looking at that face expression, I think Elise feels the same way. I don't think they are so confident in the rate cutting regime doing anything to the economy or the dead cat that is currently bouncing called Australian property. We aren't convinced. So they're recognizing that some transmission channels, such as pickup in borrowing or the effect on the home building sector, may not be operating in the same way as in the past, and that the negative effect of low interest rates on the income and confidence of savers may be more significant. Hmm. This is the RBA minutes October 2019, and today is 19th of October 2019. So who else doesn't see the continued interest rate cutting by Reserve Bank actually working, if not working to the opposite?
But they've said difficult trading conditions have been confirmed in the first 3 months of this financial year, have continued into October. No sign of tax cuts or rate cuts helping, and monthly store traffic down 10 to 15%, significant impact on like-for-like sales, and they had a profit downgrade. So the message is housing market really isn't seeing a significant lift.
So down on the ground level, in the trenches of the actual economy, so who is it that is not feeling the warm and fuzzy of the interest rate cuts?
Nick Scali took a massive profit downgrade today. Now, that's not surprising given the roller coaster that we've seen housing go on over the past couple of months.
Yeah, they're obviously, as a furniture provider, manufacturer, retailer, are geared to the housing market. And what they said isn't good for the whole housing sector. If you remember, on the election, all the housing stocks jumped from mortgage providers to retailers because of the relief that we were going to see a better housing market and the consumer was a little bit better off. But they've said difficult trading conditions have been confirmed in the first 3 months of this financial year, have continued into October. No sign of tax cuts or rate cuts helping, and monthly store traffic down 10 to 15%, significant impact on like-for-like sales, and they had a profit downgrade. So the message is housing market really isn't seeing a significant lift.
So is RBA really disgustingly hopeless at the moment? I have an idea.
And star rate forecaster Bill Evans on why the RBA will cut once more, and then it's helicopter money.
So, as you'll see shortly, even Bill Evans is convinced that cutting interest rates is not working. So they're going to cut it one more time anyway, from the 3/4 to 0.5% official interest rate, in his opinion. And that seems to be consensus. And once they once again realize that that didn't do anything to the economy and the housing, they're going to give up on cutting interest rates, and then they're going to do a helicopter money. Means that we're going to have a quantitative easing, printing money. For those viewers who haven't heard it before, this has been done by the European Central Bank, by Federal Reserve in America. It's done very little, so our dear Reserve Bank of Australia here is going to try and do exactly the same thing after, once again, cutting the rates and finding that that's not doing anything. So they're going to do something that's been proven around the world that did nothing, but they're going to do it anyway. So helicopter money, quantitative easing, and or the synonym is and the phrase and the actual thing that they're going to be doing is printing money, diluting the pool of the money, potentially sparking an inflation playing dangerously. Why this didn't cause inflation in United States is that United States US dollar is the reserve currency of the world, which means that no matter how much you print it, and there's a huge demand for it around the world, that will be mopped up. Plus, a lot of it has been parked inside the actual dealer banks' balance sheets and accounts, meaning that it hasn't actually hit the economy. And once again, being a reserve currency of the world, you don't really see the inflation from it. Australian dollar, far from a reserve currency of the world. If you put more in circulation, it will probably spark an inflation, which again is a dangerous game to do and to play. Yet they're going to try and do it again because, putting it quite bluntly, RBA here in Australia is brain dead. Unless they're not necessarily brain dead, but they have a goal, but they're not telling us about. They want to maybe inflate the debt away type thing. But before you think that's a good thing for you, the mortgage holder, where they will inflate away your mortgage, I've mentioned it before in one of my videos. I don't think they'll go that way because they don't want to make it easier for you. They'll make it easier for themselves, for the banks, for the government, for the RBA. Ultimately, maybe, hopefully, for the economy, but not for the end user, that being you, the borrower.
For the Reserve Bank Governor, who has to continue to try and get the unemployment rate to its target of 4.5%. Westpac Chief Economist Bill Evans has told The Business that that target is unrealistic and won't happen. He believes the RBA will only cut once more, though, before starting on more unconventional ways to pump money into the economy. It's controversial, but unavoidable.
So RBA hasn't been able to achieve anything with these rate cuts, including cutting the unemployment rate down to 4.5%, which currently is far off and far away from it at about 5.3%. So 4.5, completely unrealistic, and they've cut the interest rates so far that you really can't cut it any further before going negative.
Bill Evans, unemployment fell a little and we saw the creation of 14,000 full-time jobs. This is pretty good, isn't it?
Well, it was nice to see the unemployment rate coming down, but the main reason was that we saw a fall in the participation rate. So to hold the unemployment rate steady, you need 15 to 20,000 jobs. So that was done. So normally it would have remained steady, but because a few less people entered the workforce as a proportion of the working age population, that led to that little fall in the unemployment rate.
Your outlook is for job creation to weaken. Why?
We think that the job creation is the participation rate, I think, will start to ease a bit. And with that, we'll see lower jobs growth. Net effect will be for the unemployment rate to trend up a little. You need to get the confidence levels improving as well as improving the cash flow of the household sector. A good example of that was when we had the last rate cut in October, and the Westpac Consumer Sentiment Index fell by 5.5%. And I think part of that was, well, interest rates are at 0.75%. There must be something going wrong with this economy. And this is one of the new factors that the Reserve Bank will have to deal with. And it's actually something that, for the first time that I can recall, they mentioned in their minutes to say that the level of interest rates may be undermining confidence. So you can improve the cash flow of the household sector, but if confidence is weak, it won't get spent.
I mean, that was really nicely put. I mean, I've been saying that for a little while. It's like you cut my last video, go and watch it. Said exactly the same, that same thing. That you cut the interest rate from 1% to 0.75%, and consumer confidence drops 5%. It's like, what's going on? I mean, I think people are questioning exactly that. What is going on with the economy? Why are you cutting so sharply? So you're sending shivers down people's spines. You're not helping anyone. You are effing up. Let's see what else these highly paid officials of the Reserve Bank of Australia have to say.
The RBA Deputy Governor has warned the worst is yet to come in the housing downturn. Speaking in Sydney, Guy Debelle said the dip in construction activity is likely to last for at least another year, despite 3 interest rate cuts already. The Reserve Bank is forecasting a further 7% decline in dwelling investment over the next year, with risks the decline could be even larger.
So they're confessing. They are actually telling us that what they've done in the last few years hasn't worked, and it's going to continue to be bad.
2020 looks like being the low year for the residential construction sector. We can see through the trough to the other side.
Mr Debelle said an uptick in home prices, steady population growth and all-time low interest rates are expected to revive housing construction by 2021. To the market.
There you go. You're just going to have to wait until 2021, according to a Reserve Bank Deputy Governor, Guy Debelle. So that's a little bit of a prediction. Let's see how that pans.
The Aussie dollar surged and the Australian share market was sold off, and it's all about interest rate expectations. The market had been expecting to see an interest rate cut on Melbourne Cup Day, in fact a 42% probability. But after these numbers, the probability of a rate cut on Melbourne Cup Day has dropped to just 25%.
Looks like that they may not be cutting interest rates any further before the end of the year, 2019. Anyhow, looks like the next cut might be Feb or March 2020. And just so they keep you confused,
talking up the economy and hosing down rate expectations, but why the ANZ says the RBA will cut twice more.
To be honest, I mean, all we do, and I have to say that I am guilty of that as well, is we talk about where the interest rates are going to go, whether they're going to be, 1% or 0.75% or 0.5%. I mean, that's all we're dealing with. No one's talking about how we're going to innovate in the economy, how we're going to be more productive. It's just like, how low will the interest rates be? And so that will determine how much I can borrow to buy this overinflated property. So I can expect it to continue to go up, and there'll be a next fool that'll come along and buy it off me for more than what I paid in a year, 2, 5, 10 years time. It's a greater fool theory, and that's all we're doing, speculating. And I personally myself don't want to be part of it. I think it's going to end up in tears. They can't even agree among each other.
RBA Governor poured cold water on the prospect of more rate cuts. Dr Philip Lowe has told a high-powered IMF forum in Washington that 3 rate cuts from the RBA and the government's tax cuts have been effective in bolstering the tepid economy. Odds for a Melbourne Cup rate cut plunged from 40% to just 16% after the governor said he wouldn't assume more cuts are needed, saying, "I don't think it's the right assumption to make that we're going to have a lot more work to do to get inflation back to target and growth back to trend." But in mixed messages, while Dr Lowe pointed to a rebound in housing, his deputy yesterday warned of worse to come in the construction sector.
We are forecasting a further 7% decline in dwelling investment over the next year, and there is some risk the decline could be larger.
Oh dear, it doesn't sound like we're in good hands.
We are forecasting a further 7% decline in dwelling investment over the next year, and there is some risk the decline could be larger.
Guy Debelle says the construction slump is going to shave 1 percentage point off growth for next year, a prediction echoed by the IMF this week. And today, news that Australia's biggest export market, China, has posted a weaker than expected 6% growth in the third quarter. ANZ senior economist.
So who do we trust? I absolutely can't answer that question. The only thing I can say is that you got to trust your own research and your own conviction. Get into a $1 million loan or not? I think the answer to that question is easy.